Welcome to another lesson on migration, looking at our big question, which is why did people migrate? Title for today is again, what role has money, the economy, played in migration to and from Britain, part 2. You'll remember last lesson we looked at the Irish migration to Britain. Today we're going to be looking at migration from the Caribbean. And some key words for you to write down: the Commonwealth, Race Relations Act, and the NHS. So pause the video and write down the title, the keywords and their definitions. 5 questions for our Connect. Could you please answer them in full sentences? And if you don't know the answer to these questions, then please look back at the previous videos, or if you need to, use Google to help you as well. And if you're really struggling and neither the previous videos or Google has helped you, then please email your history teacher and answer those in full sentences. So pause the video now and complete that, please. So our timeline of migration to Britain, we're now on our very last box on the timeline. We're looking at 1948, the SS Empire Windrush arrives, marking the beginning of mass migration to Britain. So that's what we'll be looking at today. Some of you may have heard of the Windrush scandal, the Windrush generation. Lots of things that have been in the news recently. We're going to take a look at what that's all about today. So the first thing to do is we're looking at migration from the West Indies, and you can see a picture of the Empire Windrush, which is a boat on the top left. And what I'd like you to do is watch the video using the link in the description of this YouTube video and answer those 4 questions in full sentences, please. To find the link, you can either copy it, I've put it just below the questions there, or you can copy it and paste it directly from the description of the video. To do that, you just go minimize the video, so make sure it's not full screen, and then look just underneath the video at the description, and the link should be there. If it's not, just press read more and you'll be able to copy it and go directly to the video. So watch the video and answer those 4 questions in full sentences, please. Pause the video now. So for the next few slides, like last lesson, there's going to be some information and some pictures. What I'd like you to do is pause the video on each slide. I'll remind you to do that. Read the information and look at the images as well. And we're thinking to start with, what was life like for West Indians in Britain? So pause the video and read the information now. So another slide for you to read. On this one, I've highlighted one word which might be a bit confusing: symbolic. If you don't know what symbolic means, then please Google it or look at it in a dictionary and maybe write that definition down to help you as well. So read the slide here and then move on. So on this slide, again, read the text and look at the picture. But the picture is a racist card that was put in a window of a cafe in the 1980s, or that's what we think from the history we have about it. And you can see it's a really horrible racist card, but that was the reality for many West Indians, for many Irish at the time, that they were not allowed in certain places and were even compared to animals. So a really hard and horrible and racist card, but it's history. It's something that we need to look at and read about and learn from so that it doesn't happen again. So pause the video and read this slide. Another slide. This slide is talking about some race riots which happened in the 1950s. One in Notting Hill in the top right, and then in the bottom right is another racist organisation, the National Front. Read the slide and look at the pictures. And if you want to, there's lots of information about these 2 different events, and you can find more about them online, particularly the race riots that happened in Notting Hill in 1958. So for this slide, this is talking about a speech made by a politician called Enoch Powell, And what I'd like you to do is read the information on this slide. So pause the video and read through this, please. You can see Enoch Powell just in the background on the right speaking into the microphone. And another slide talking about the reaction to the Rivers of Blood speech and the reaction that the government had. So pause the video, and that's the final slide to read. So a little bit of source work, and what we're going to do here, your picture is on the right. We've already seen this picture. It's the Empire Windrush, the boat, and you see the caption in blue at the top left of the screen. Source D, the SS Empire Windrush arriving at Tilbury Docks in 1948. What I would like you to do is have a go at these 3 questions, but I'm aware that these 3 questions are quite difficult. So what I'd like you to do is have a go at them first. So what type of source is this and when is it from? Should be fairly straightforward. Question 2, slightly harder. What does the source suggest about what it was like for Caribbean migrants coming to Britain? So use the picture. What can you tell about the people there? What's maybe their emotions? What could you guess from their body language about how they're feeling about arriving in Britain? And then question 3, using the information you've read and the video you watched in this lesson, how can you place this source in context? How can you work out what's going on in this source? What do you already know? Once you've completed them, on the next slide, I'm going to put some example answers. Now, what you could do is very easily cheat, and I'm sure some of you will. But what I'd like you to do is have a go at answering these 3 questions first, and then compare your answers to the answers on the next slide. So pause the video now and complete that task before then comparing it to the answers. So here are the answers. Hopefully you've already written down your answers, so they shouldn't read identically to these 3 answers, but here are 3 example answers. 1, source D is a photograph taken in 1948. You should have something fairly similar to that. 2, you might have something very different, but here's an example answer. It suggests that the West Indian migrants were happy, because you can see in the photograph from their body language they're waving and cheering as they arrive in England. You could have other suggestions as well, so use common sense to see if you were right for that one. And then 3, this one's slightly harder, but how could you place it from your own knowledge? You could have said this is accurate because from my own knowledge I know that they'd been invited by the government to work in the NHS and on public transport and were paid more than they were in the West Indies, as there was a lot of employment in Britain after World War II. Again, if you've got something that's different, you can hopefully work out whether it was correct from the source. So, similar task, but this time you're not going to get any help. So source F, read the Rivers of Blood speech made by Enoch Powell there, and then 3 questions to answer, the same ones as the last one, but I've introduced a new word in question 1, provenance. And all that means is what type of source is it and where is it from, so the provenance of the source. So answer those 3 questions in full sentences, pause the video and complete this task. So our demonstrate task, the first half of it. Could you complete another push and pull diagram, but this time for the Caribbean migration? So I'd probably get at least 2 on each side if you can. What pushed people out of the Caribbean to come to Britain, but also what was attractive about Britain, what drew them there. And then I'd like you to compare what similarities are there between the ways both groups, those from Ireland and those from the Caribbean, were treated by the British people. So maybe look back at the Irish lesson if you need to, and compare the 2 for similarities. So the second half of our demonstrate task, what drove people to migrate? You're going to write around 3 paragraphs for this, and they don't need to be particularly long. But what I'd like you to do is write 1 paragraph about how religion played a role in people moving to England. Then another paragraph about how the economy, so money, drove people to move to England. And those factors could be linked, so you could have the example of the Jews, who were mainly persecuted for their faith, but also people were quite suspicious of them at the time because they tended to work in money lending around the time of William the Conqueror, and so they were seen as wealthy. So you can see there how religion and the economy kind of merged together into one. But try and write 2 separate paragraphs, one on religion and how that drove people to migrate, one on the economy, and then a short conclusion to finish, so maybe a couple of sentences. What do you think was the main reason that people came to Britain from what you've looked at over the whole of this unit? And I've given you some optional sentence starters at the bottom, a short introduction sentence, and then some sentence starters for your different paragraphs. So pause the video, spend a bit of time on this. This is your longer task that you'll demonstrate. Pause the video and complete that now. Finally, a quick consolidate. So again, 7 questions. You don't need to answer these in full sentences, but do write down the answers on your paper or type them on your Word document, and then maybe get someone at home to test you on these different questions to see how much you can remember. Well done.